StuGo is the most recent show Disney's released, and I can't wait to tell you all of the things I'm passionate about with the show. But in reading how other people felt about the show, through my community and the greater community at large, I think it's time we spoke about the original show problem. So this video will be split into two parts. Gushing about StuGo, although I have some things I'm not crazy about, and some of the reactions I've seen towards the show. Through the first episode, you see these 6 kids go to this big island full of mutants under the guise of it being a summer camp, only to learn from this morally gray scientist, Dr. Lula, that it was a big lie.
I can't keep up this nicey nice camp counselor charade any longer. There is no summer camp. This was a scam.
The first episode, and the rest of the 3 that's pretty much out at this time of recording, deals with the crew handling this newfound situation. So I'm sure you have questions such as, who are these 6 kids? What makes the show good? Why is the scientist lady morally gray? Is there any interesting lore yet? And is this going to be cancelled in a season? And don't worry, we're going to get to all of that and much more. As a crew, these 6 students are competitive in their own ways and are a very wacky cast. The leader type, Pliny, is often the voice of the crew, but not always. She comes up with the plans and is very addicted to validation, especially through academic success. She also loses her hair in the second episode. Then you have Marion, who, as far as these 4 episodes go, somewhat acts as a second in command. She's been the voice of reason and kind of reminds me of Pearl from Steven Universe in the sense that she's very anxious and apprehensive to the new and unusual.
Pliny, this seems really dangerous.
Okay, I admit it. That was maybe a bit too far.
But look how happy Larry is. He's gonna get hurt. You've got to stop him.
No way, I'm his friend. And good friends support each other.
You have Chip Manhands. No, that's not his real name, but that's pretty much what he's gonna call himself in the show, who aspires to be the strong alpha of the group, but physically he hasn't held up to that end of the bargain. So oftentimes he only carries this manly man aspect in words only.
Okay, I see some old palm boat.
There's also Sarah, who actually seems to be the toughest one in the group physically, if not for beating up a mutant into submission and getting lost in a mud puddle at least more than once and surviving.
Give me the flag, Pliny.
Oh, okay.
I'm not gonna drop the ow. Ow, ow.
Sarah!
Now for the last 2 characters, they have a standout episode already, so we'll be spending more time talking about them. So you have Larry, who is a bit enthusiastic and just as competitive as the rest of the crew, especially in the episode Noodle It a Little Bit. Within that episode, it shows how much he, like Pliny, can become addicted to validation. Larry plays the cello, but doesn't believe that he can catch a catfish by noodling, but he showed to be much more of a quick learner than he thought he could be.
I got one!
Nice one, Larry! Now give me a thumbs up.
Oh! No way! Did you just noodle a toodle?
But in learning so quickly, he'd want to noodle bigger and more dangerous fish, and then land animals, and then venture into outer space. Now, I love me a good lazy character like Gumball or Johnny Test or pre-season 7 Rigby, but I think it's cool to see main characters who want bigger and bigger challenges as they win. Unfortunately here, as you would see quickly, Larry is noodling creatures that leave him bruised. If it wasn't for the mutants cheering him on, Pliny would be able to get him to stop, but unfortunately he grows a big ego about it all.
Larry! Huh? You're coming home with me!
Is that the best you got?
Now while these 5 characters are pretty cool, it is the 6th and last character that I saved the best for last. My favorite character so far, by far, Francis. There's just something about the contrast between the other 5's hyperactive energy and Francis's laid-back energy that made me interested in seeing a Francis-centric episode. And I wasn't disappointed. Within the Nanny Tea, Dr. Lula, the scientist that pretty much scammed them all into being here, would create a manatee mutant, obviously called the Nanny Tea, designed to take care of them, specifically their constant need for validation in the form of gold stars. At first, everyone is excited to get as many gold stars as possible. Except for Francis.
Hurry, Francis! We're running out of sticks!
I have to pace myself. I have a dry tongue.
Come on! Look at Larry!
You can do this, Larry. You're the pain.
Look
let him go!
She learns quickly that the nanny tea spamming the stars creates a dopamine rush that's manipulating the rest of the crew to please it so that they can get more stars, which definitely has parallels to plenty of things today. Understanding this, she constantly pesters Dr. Lula, who doesn't want to be bothered and doesn't really enjoy their company as is, and she's always working on something that she wants to do by herself.
If you insist on interrupting, do not speak unless you are called upon. Yes?
The arts and crafts are getting unconventional.
Thank you for the heads up.
I really think
Don't think, just leave.
Eventually, she does get Dr. Lula to help, but even more importantly, whenever she gets shooed away to be with the others before that point, she starts to deny the gold star, understanding that the chase for it lies madness. This even gets her slightly ostracized by her friends, as the nanny tea starts to manipulate them into seeing Francis as not a team player.
So, pal to pal, the Nanity is starting to question your commitment to the project.
It isn't until Francis is able to convince Dr. Lula that the nanny tea has been working on a doomsday device that they're able to save the day. So what about Dr. Lula? Well, so far she reminds me of a mix between Ida, Rick Sanchez, and Grunkle Stan, and here's how. Within the first episode, she makes it clear that she doesn't want to be a babysitter and gives a very cold shoulder to the crew immediately. If she had it her way, they'd be kicked off and forced to fend for themselves. Within the first episode, they were tasked to fix her crime laser, and while they eventually end up getting the right component to fix it, when they learn that there isn't a summer camp, Pliny uses the crystal component as an extortion strategy. Either Dr. Lula teaches them, or she breaks the crystal. So back to my point about Dr. Lula being like Ida, Rick, and Stan, you would think, what would those other characters do?
Nobody extorts Dr. Lula. But I like the energy.
This one decision she made won her over for me. Within the second episode, which was the sneak peek for the show, she would be nice enough to give them a box of food, but not nice enough to help them when the mutants steal said box of food. She pushes for them to fight for their food rather than complain and receive handouts. However, what solidified her personality for me is that at the end of the episode, when the crew end up losing their food altogether in a battle with the mutants, they all band together to steal food from her lair as a unit.
Well. It took all day, but we finally got there.
Now, this taught me that she prides herself on independence and respects that in others. In this instance, she's teaching and approving of the lesson of stealing and taking and fighting for what you feel is yours. Which is chaotic and morally gray in this instance, but I respect it because they did do that and she is okay with that. So with all the good things, I just have two worries about the show. For one, with such a big cast in a similar vein to Primos, that even if that show didn't have that one controversy that stained its first impression, having a lot of characters that you don't know pushed on you makes it really tough to get to know any of them on a deep enough level to care about seeing them and the whole show again. Here it's even harder because I would argue that technically Primos revolved around Tater mostly, but here, StuGo doesn't really revolve around Pliny as much, for example, who's kind of like the leader type character. I still don't know that much about Sarah, Chip, or Marion in the first 4 episodes compared to Pliny, Larry, and Francis, and I could just see some people being turned away from the commitment of getting to know them. The other concern is that while I do love episodic shows, I'm crazy for episodic shows, and the creator himself, Ryan Gillis, shares in the same sentiment about why episodic shows can be goated in saying things such as, quote, "I didn't like the idea that you couldn't dive in and watch one episode and then maybe not understand a joke or not because you didn't see the previous episode." I wonder if that makes the show look a little boring to some people who've been spoiled with Disney's previous efforts of pushing more story-driven shows. Now, this is gonna sound a little bit rich coming from me, but I do think Disney needs another story-driven show like The Owl House, Gravity Falls, or Amphibia, particularly one that'd be comfortable with growing and promoting and not stunting the growth of, because they had a good run of those shows. And I thought with this premise that StuGo was going to be that. Even before these 4 episodes came out, just the premise alone made me think about, oh, are they gonna get off the island? Are the parents gonna find out what happens? Or if there's a big secret or a villain in the midst of it all? And I'm not saying that that can't be accomplished in an episodic show, but story-driven shows usually build towards things like this. I think the show is cool, but I have far too many examples of shows that I thought were cool, but it pretty much comes and goes, which leads us perfectly into the second part of this video. There's this big sentiment in our lovely community of ours, the animation community, that people want to see original shows. Now, when I put put out my community post talking about StuGo, a concerning percentage specifically focused on the end of the show, jumping to straight when or if it'll be canceled soon. Now, I can't blame anyone for thinking that, especially when for Disney you have the way that the Owl House ended, you have Haley's On It being canceled with just one season, and even the way that The Ghost of Molly McGee ended as recent examples of how Disney treats its shows, especially these 3 shows being original shows. So in that aspect, I do hope that Disney pushes StuGo and gives it its proper treatment, especially since it's another titmouse show, like Mau Mau, like Motor City. Speaking of, some people have been bashing the art style, no longer saying Cal Arts, but pretty much walking up to the door of that argument, which is funny because in this example, the company that worked on Motor City worked on StuGo. So if you thought their work was good there, then you should at least give this a try. Not even saying that you should like it, but just to give it a try if you respect the company that made Motor City. And what's even more messed up with this mindset is that I can see StuGo becoming the next Motor City in a few years, in the sense that it'll be another original animated show that people ignore today just to complain tomorrow when complaining that Disney or any other network doesn't have any original shows. And by the way, Cartoon Network is excluded from that argument because they've imploded for now. I've seen this with Minimo's Posts, I've seen this with It's Pony, I've seen this with Ellie from Earth. I mean, I can go on for a long time here. Glitch Text, My Dad the Bounty Hunter, We Baby Bears, and I'm only naming these shows because I've covered these shows. And there's several other shows that I've spoken about. When it's out, there's much resistance in getting people to try that in a few years, it's gonna be spoken about the same way that I'm sure many people now feel about Mixed Souls, or Summer Camp Island, or Wander Over Yonder, or Sanjay and Craig, Welcome to the Wayne, Harvey Beak, shows that are looked on fondly now, but were overshadowed by other shows that people gave more chances and more attention to at the time. I firmly believe that big companies don't give original shows enough time to really marinate and find their footing, but there are a lot of people who are waiting for the next Gravity Falls, the next Owl House, the next Avatar, quote unquote, that they skip a lot of original shows that come in between that and miss a lot of gold, which I do believe also plays into this cycle that original shows go through. I understand the pain of Motor City fans because I'm a Mau Mau fan. And if you have no idea what I'm a Mau Mau fan means in this instance, or if you haven't heard of the show Mau Mau, or why people are heartbroken over it being canceled after one season, then you should check out this amazing video here that'll bring you up to speed.